wherever you're comfortable with. All right. This might take a little bit to figure out because it's kind of low. While I'm adjusting this, think a minute about what our culture says about love. How does our culture portray love and marriage? And this is open discussion. I want to hear your opinions. So go ahead. If you have something to share, say it out loud.
Disposable.
Yeah,
Disposable.
temporary.
Maybe I'll just hold it to now. Temporary. What else do we hear?
Traditional.
Additional.
Really emotion-based.
Say that one more time.
Really based on emotions.
Based on emotions.
Impulsive.
Impulsive.
Convenience.
Convenience. What would be the greatest influences for marriage in our culture? Or love? What influences the young kids that are coming up into that?
Like physical desire.
Music? Multi-size. Yes, true. There are things that enhance it. Music they listen to, the movies they watch, the TV that is right in front of them, the way people have their interact in their conversations. Those really are. We think that we aren't what we read. We think we're just kind of passively partaking of all this or listening to it or enjoying it entertainment-wise, but it really is. People are conveying a belief, and they want to influence us into agreeing with them on those beliefs. And that, sadly, a lot of people do. Love has become a very casual word. Today, I'm just going to talk to you about love and marriage. That's the thing. I do not claim to be an expert on it at all. But, well, let's go back to the whole influence, the influence in the culture. I'm going to test your movie skills here, your romantic movie skills. And I have some prizes for those who may achieve this. I'm going to give you a quote and see if you can answer what movie that's from. I need somebody to look and see who puts their hand up first. I'll just come up here and watch and see if you can hear it first. Okay, listen carefully. You mock my pain. Life is pain, Highness, and anyone who says differently is selling something.
I saw
Ever after?
Princess Bride.
Yes. Go ahead. I've got, and guess what? What do we say we always love? Chocolate. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to get chocolate. All right. Next one. Yeah, pick one. Enjoy. I'd send you a bouquet of newly sharpened pencils if I knew where you lived. On the other hand, yes.
What is this?
I'll finish the quote. On the other hand, this not knowing has its advantages, since you've got mail. She hollered it out. Oh no, it's chocolate. Can't guess if you like that one. And last, let's see who gets this. Perhaps these offensive might have been overlooked had you not your pride been hurt by my honesty. Yes, come on up. It's funny how well we know them because we hear them and they stick with us, don't they? These words do. They stay with us. Whether you let them influence us, I promise you, our feelings kind of take it and go with it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But like I said, I don't claim to be an expert on love and marriage, but I have learned a lot over the years. I like to say I am 40 and I wear it proudly. That doesn't mean I've experienced everything, but I've experienced a lot. 15 years of marriage, 14 years of motherhood, 10 years of homeschooling. That requires a whole different kind of love. And for the past 17 years, I've been in ministry to 18 to 20-somethings, and I've mentored many young women in their pursuit of love. I've got to sit and counsel many of them and talk them through their feelings and their emotions and what they agree with and what they shouldn't agree with. Many girls go to college pursuing their degree of MRS. The misses. It is an inside joke there, I promise you. MRS degree. Here's time. But they do. They go there and they pursue it. And so I really have to talk to them a lot about this, and I hear what they're influenced by and what they listen to. And I have been there, and I've agreed with all of the wrong things and the right things with them. Since I've been working with them, I've asked them this question. Mike and I have asked them this question when they've said they're ready, they want to marry this person. So we asked them, why is this person the one you believe you should marry? Can you guess what the answer is?
They make me feel good.
Oh, yes. They make me feel so good. When he's with me, my heart just counts so much. I'm just like so excited. I get butterflies in my stomach. I mean, it is just like, they just bring their childhood loves into everything that they feel as an adult. And I mean, those things aren't bad. It's nice to be excited. It's nice to feel those, joys. But that's not why you pursue marriage. And so I asked them this question: what makes you think you're ready to be married? Most of them sit there and look at Mike and I, and they're like, I don't know. They really have a blank stare on their face. And some of them may be bold enough to say, wow, I'm this and this and this. And then through a time of counseling, they're like, wow, I'm not ready. I'm really not ready. And we get them to the point where we want them to admit that they're not really ready. Because really, how many of us felt like we were ready to be married once we were married in the midst of it? No, I was not ready for this. So, usually when people come together, initially in that romantic relationship, they're very much thinking about self. This person makes me feel this way. This person makes me feel like this and enjoy this and know this. It's very much a self-focus. I get to share a little story about my husband because he's not here. But he doesn't know that I'm sharing this. But he says, I knew him when he was dating this girl, so when I first met him. And on his first date with her, he just about threw her out the car and left her on the side of the road. This is his first date. And then on his second date, okay, these were his words, and he likes to speak in extremes. He would never actually do that, but this is how he expresses himself. And another time, yes, they actually went out multiple times. For some reason, they went out for 6 months. At one point, he was building a doghouse with her, and he claims that he almost threw a hammer at her. He just was so frustrated. And so I asked him, I was like, why would you stay with her? And really, what made it end? And this is his word. This is great. He says, she was too much like me. It was such a slap in the face for him. He realized, I can't live with myself. There's no way. When he first met her, he thought he liked her because really he liked himself. And so he liked somebody else who's like him. He's like, this is perfect. He gets to fall in love twice. But then, he really doesn't like. And so that's how some of us pursue a relationship. We like somebody who's like us, who enjoys the same things we do and has the same personality and all that kind of stuff. And then we start to get disagreeable, And then some of us pursue the exact opposite of us. We are drawn to the person who's least like us because sometimes we're just too down on ourselves. But it's this whole mentality of, you complete me, you make up for all my faults and all my flaws, and I can't be like that, but you can, and we put all our hope in them filling up all those holes that we have in our own lives. The problem is that when that person is not like you, usually you end up wanting things to go your way, and they really don't want things to go your way, and so that ends up being a big mess as well, right? So we bring all these attitudes into relationships, and as well as our past. We bring what goes on in our families. We bring even our friends, the relationships we have with friends, and how much they've influenced us. We bring into our relationship some past romantic relationships that we've had, and the hurts from those. And this is what we bring into our pursuit of love that will eventually we desire be marriage. In truth, we're really self-centered people, and it's just our nature. It's within us. You know this comes naturally because I know you're all here because you have babies, and when they come into the world, they come screaming until they get what they want, right? This is how we are born into life. We scream until we get our way, and we just do it a little more mildly as we get older. But what is dangerous about this is that when we feel these insecurities and we go into a marriage expecting this person to make us feel loved in all these insecurities and in all these hurts, we expect this person to start becoming our functional savior, an idol in our life, the one who controls our ups and our downs and our good, and even we let them think that they're supposed to even bring about the bad and just like allow that to happen. Like they are the one who controls our lives. And so when we go into the relationship and we make them an idol, we have all these expectations of them, and obviously disappointment sets in, and the truth, reveals itself. This is not the same person that I married, that I thought I was marrying. The heat is on. It has cooled a lot when you see a new person. One of our greatest needs as women, and I see it in my little girl all the time, is to be needed and cherished in a relationship. I know that's in every one of our hearts. And this is where the romance really is for us. To be seen, noticed as someone who has value, and someone who has worth, and someone who's worth being longed for. And that is a genuine desire that we should have. It's been given to us. Sorry, can you hear me when I'm talking for a second? But to know that desire, we really do need to know where that desire comes from. I believe wholeheartedly that God created us with that desire. And as a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ in my life, I have learned and experienced that God truly is love. He is the source of love. He is where I get those feelings, those desires met. And so the kind of love that we desire as women is found first in Him. And if He's that source, and it's found first in Him, then it's not found in the culture. And how much do we listen to the culture as much as we listen to who the source is? It doesn't make sense. If He really is the source, then we must listen to the source and pursue the source. So I want to go into a few words that define love, 3 kinds of love, and you can find these in Scripture. And just kind of unpack God's way of revealing love to us, what it really is. The first kind of love we'll talk about is phileo. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this, but phileo love is a term that is used for brotherly love. You'll hear brotherly love a lot. In our case, it's sisterly affection that we have for one another. It's a deep friendship that's connected in our heart. And I know that you're all thinking about someone that you may have this kind of connection with, as I say this, that sisterly affection for. It's a passion for one another that's based on commitment to each other and the same principles, the same beliefs and life background that you share with one another. And one place that you find this displayed is in the Bible through David and Jonathan, if you want to look that up. Jonathan was very committed to David. He loved what David was about and what he served, and he wanted to be wholeheartedly with him in it, and so he gave him his friendship, his brotherly love. That's phileo love. The second kind of love we're going to talk about is eros love. This is the romantic love. Its root is, we get the same word, erotic. That's very sensual. It has sexual connotations. This is where you find the feelings and the emotions. And this is, you can actually find this written out in Scripture. It's in Song of Solomon. It's a very erotic book about a love between a man and a woman. And you find out that, wait a second, oh my goodness, this came from God. He put this together. You know, he made this. And it's a beautiful thing written in Scripture. The last kind of love we'll talk about is agape love. This word is what defines God's unconditional love. Unconditional really is the term that our culture uses for that. And this is the love that brings us, I'm just going to read this straight from what I wrote because it has so much in it. This is a love that brings us back into relationship by dealing honestly with and putting away what has separated us and what has caused separation between us. It puts away our self-centered wrongs, the things that we might call sin. It looks at someone, sees all the faults and everything that might hinder that relationship, and decides this needs to be dealt with, but I'm going to accept the person first. This is agape love. This is displayed through Jesus Christ. And he displayed this by paying our debt, the things that we have wronged, done wrong to God, and ignoring him, and not acknowledging that he has created us, and that he wants to be in relationship with us. God sent Jesus so that we can actually have a relationship with him. And we see this agape love through his suffering and his death on the cross for what we have done. It's a perfect love. It's a forgiving love. It's a love that's patient and kind. It's a love that's not easily angered. It's a love that doesn't keep a record of wrongs. It feels kind of overwhelming, doesn't it? You know, this unconditional love. Everybody says unconditional, but really, how many of us really don't keep a record of wrongs? You know, it's not self-seeking. It believes all things. It hopes all things. So these definitions of love, eros, phileo, and agape, show us something that we need to pursue, not what the culture offers. And we see that all three include total devotion. And they're way more than sentimentality and emotions and feelings or affection. But don't get me wrong, okay? I really like affection. I really love the eros love. I really love the romantic side. I'm going to share a little bit more with you about my life. But those are not love itself. The feeling is not love itself. You haven't arrived once you feel it. That's it. That's a benefit of it. And before I pursued Mike, I pursued Eros love first. I really thought that if that guy didn't turn me on the moment I saw him, then he wasn't what I was supposed to pursue. I really thought that if he didn't make me laugh, he didn't make me feel good about myself, if he wasn't hot, if he didn't, I really was so appearance-centered and what it was about me and how I felt, and that's what it was about for me. And then I met, before I met Mike, there was a guy that I was dating, and he told me, he said, someday, Jen, you're going to find out that love is not a feeling, it is a choice. And I didn't believe him. He was right. But it was awesome that he told me that. And he said, I'm sorry that I won't be the one that you get to figure this out with. And, obviously I broke up with him. But then I met Mike, and this is just funny, and he will not like me sharing this, but he actually hates it. I was not attracted to Mike when I first met him at all. I was like, okay, so I'll just say, since I was very appearance-driven, and I wanted to be like, oh wow, the moment I saw him, his hair kind of flopped back in this like big wave. And he wore these like Levi's that were red and they were cut off. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, who is this guy? You know, he just did not have any care for what he wore, any care for how he looked. But he was really a nice guy. He was really kind. And I did become friends with him. In fact, he was leading a Bible study that I was a part of. And I enjoyed being around him. And we became friends. Eventually, I decided that I really needed to help out with that Bible study. So I started leading and helping with the girls. And our friendship really was based on our love for the Lord at first, and just the things we agreed about when we saw in the Bible. And then all of a sudden we started to become just friends with each other because we had these same principles and this commitment to one another, to this truth, and for teaching it to people. And then all of a sudden I started to become drawn down. No, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not attracted to this guy. I can't be attracted to this guy. He's not attracted. But all of a sudden my love changed. And this eros, this romance came out of something deeper and something more genuine and something similar. And it was wonderful, but it was scary for me at the same time because it was so foreign to me. I really, really, really wanted what I saw in the movies. I thought that was it. I thought that intense, that frustrated, that always, at each other, falling over each other, that was it for me. And I was so misled. I really was at the very, very extreme of the romance novels and all that kind of stuff. And God, He redeemed me, man. He changed my heart. And He did it through my relationship with Mike. So one of the things that I learned in this pursuit of Mike is that love starts with engaging your will. And it is a choice. I had to choose. If I was going to trust God, and this was the guy I was going to pursue, did I trust Him enough to let me have the eros side of that in our relationship, the romantic side? In fact, I got to talk to a lot of college students about that. One girl was like, why does this guy keep calling me? He's just a friend. That's like the kiss of death to guys, obviously, he's just a friend. And I said, let me just ask you something. Do you trust him in your relationship? And she's like, yes, he's so genuine and so encouraging. Do you feel like you can talk to him about anything, and he is there to encourage you? And she's like, yeah, he's wonderful. We have this bond. I was like, do you enjoy, they went dancing together and they had these dancing classes. Do you enjoy that? Yes. And I said, if you've got these things, can you trust that God will give you the romantic side of it? The side that that us women want, those in-love feelings. And she said, I guess I can. And she asked the Lord to bless her. And I just love it. Just skip to the end of the story. They're married, they have 3 kids, and they are so in love with each other. And they really do, love, bless each other. And he was like, I can't believe she married you. Because she's just this wonderful girl, and he is just this super genuine, pure-hearted guy. It was wonderful to encourage her to pursue love in that way, because I had been given that pursuit by God. It was such a gift for me to encourage her in that way. Okay, back to what I was talking about. With all this in mind, what would be a good definition of love? It needs to include the eros, the phileo, the agape. We can say that love is a willful choice to sacrifice yourself for that object of love. This is a good working definition. Love is a willful choice to sacrifice yourself for the object of love. But where does that put self? Our culture says, meet your own needs first. This says, give of yourself first. This is so opposite. This is actually a scary thought. My first thought that comes to mind when you say something like this is, what if it doesn't go both ways? What if I give and I don't get anything in return? Who's going to take care of me? I don't want to be walked on. I don't want to be a doormat. I don't want somebody to take advantage of me, right? These are all the fears and the thoughts that come in our mind when we think sacrificial love. Oh my goodness. And then we think, I want the eros. I want the romantic. I want to feel that kind of pleasure of being loved too. But God did create the eros that is from Him, and if agape, the eros will come as a result of that. But it must be built up the right way. Eros is the romantic, and it must be built on the phileo, that commitment, those same principles, that friendship. And the phileo must be founded in agape, that sacrificial, forgiving heart. A heart, honestly, that has been changed by God. And this is what really makes a marriage thrive. I believe that there's a lot of marriages that can get by. I think that people cling to each other for many selfish reasons. One could be they don't want to be alone. They just don't want to be alone. So they cling to one person in their life and become dependent on them. But how many of those marriages are actually functioning with genuine love? I do believe that people can still be forgiving if they don't know Jesus to a certain degree. Since creation, we all have this capacity to love in a certain way. That's what we were born with in the Lord. But to make up for our lack of unconditional love, when we are wronged, we always expect something in return. And we keep that list going on in our mind. And often when we're not compensated, resentment remains. And that limit's going to be reached in somebody's mind. All right, I'm done. I have let this pass. When in fact, they just take it from the cab where they're driving and thrown it into the back of the truck where it's like open and maybe it'll fly out and maybe it won't. But, eventually it's like a huge load that they dump on you. and then they say it's done. And I think that's what happens in divorce. You see if they're forgiving. Okay. But, so forgiveness really, honestly, is agape's beginning. One of my favorite moments in the Gospels is when Jesus was with a woman, and she was kneeling down before him, and she was drenching his feet with her tears, and she was wiping them with her hair. And her reputation had gone before her to him, and those watching knew who she was, and she was criticized for what she was doing for him. But Jesus said, leave her alone. And he also said to the man watching, he says, listen to this. A certain moneylender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now, which one of them loved more? Jesus said this woman who was weeping at his feet knew all that he had forgiven her for, and she loved him much for it. He goes on to explain that this woman had been forgiven for much, and therefore she loves much. Agape is something that you only give when you've actually received it. Now, I want this to translate from you and what you need and what you want. I know you want somebody who is forgiving of you, who accepts you, and even with all your faults, and deals with them honestly. Not just somebody who's easygoing, okay? It's not easygoing. Easygoing person can be that person who keeps the record of wrongs. It's somebody who's forgiving, who sees you, sees your flaws, deals with them, prays for you, knows that they're there, recognizes them, and is honest with you about them. I think that's what our husband needs from us. Not that we address all of his faults, but that we are forgiving towards him. And that your forgiveness actually becomes a point of change in his life. Your forgiving heart towards him. 1 Peter 3:1-6 is one of the scariest verses for women. I thought it was appropriate since you're talking about being you bravely. It says, likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, you could put there, don't love you the way you're supposed to be loved. They may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives. When they see you respectful and your pure conduct, do not let your adornment be merely external, the braiding of hair, putting on of gold, or the wearing of clothing, but let your adorning be hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. At the end of that verse it says, if you are children, of this spirit, of Sarah, of that believing heart, you will be able to do that, which is frightening. It is a frightening thing to trust somebody with your life, and it's a frightening thing to actually forgive unconditionally. But this is what your husband needs. He needs your forgiving heart. He needs you to recognize, yes, that he was wrong and not just kind of like shrug it off, but really forgive him for it and move forward. And when he forgives, the result is a love for you. It's just like when Christ forgave that woman. She loved much because she was forgiven much. And I think it's the same in our marriage. Your marriage will be full of love if it is full of forgiveness for one another. I want to share one last story, if I can, before the timer runs out. When I was listening to a lady speak about divorce and what the Bible says about divorce, she shared a story about a woman who was married to a man for a long time, and then she found out he had an affair. And she forgave him and accepted him back, and he's with her, and then she found out he had another affair. And she prayed about it, and she forgave him. And then he left her for another affair. And multiple times her heart had been broken. And she had children with this man, lots of children that we were watching. And one of the things that she learned in her time with God was that God was calling her to be forgiving. And so she did. She faithfully prayed for her husband for a very long time. And she waited. She waited for him. And yeah, he came back. He came back and he repented of every relationship he had ever had. And he came back to her and wept. And to this day, she loves him and they are together. I think he came back when they said she was in her 40s. And one thing that I think, the reason why God says that a gentle and quiet spirit, the forgiving heart is valuable in us, is not only for our husband's sake, but for our children's sake. Her kids were watching her. They were watching her wait for their dad. They were watching her pray for him. They were watching her faithfulness to him and her unconditional love. She was more an example of who God is in those kids' life than anything that they'll ever know. And that's why it's so precious to God that our hearts are forgiving and quiet and gentle and patient. And that's what I believe when we read this 1 Corinthians long list of what love is. At the very end it says, love endures all things. And then it says, love never fails. This woman truly believed that. She believed that her love, infused by who God is and in his forgiveness over her, given to this man, would not fail. Even if he didn't come back to her, her love for him would not fail. And it was just an awesome picture to me of what marriage truly is. It's not based on feelings, not based on emotions, not based on circumstances. And it is based on commitment and faithfulness and forgiveness. So that's the last thought I want to leave with you guys, is that true love initiates with a forgiving heart. It sees your faults. It deals honestly with them. It doesn't hold them against you, and it continually pursues. So, amen to your marriage.